Today, I will be talking about how women are traditionally seen in traditional Judaism and how they're seen today in modern Judaism. In traditional Judaism, women are seen in two different ways. On one hand, some texts refer to women as charismatic luminaries, heroines, intellectuals, devoted wives and daughters in law, and leaders. In addition, two books of the Hebrew Scriptures are named after outstanding women. There is no one idealized conception of womanhood, as there are listed characteristics of the ideal wife, but also stories of significant participants in the unfolding of Jewish history. There are stories of clever and wise women, such as Deborah, who was a wife but also a military leader for a significant battle. However, most texts and traditions do not have the best view of women. They refer to the uterus as a place of rot and place a few restrictions. The texts tend to focus more so around men, which creates an androcentric perspective of the religion. The texts barely mention other aspects of women's lives other than their roles in the men's lives. A woman's main role in life was to be the ideal wife and the mother for the most important and a mother, which is the most important aspect of a woman. In addition, if a wife is unable to produce children, that means that God has judged her harshly, and technically a man can divorce her for her infertility. The birth of males has been praised, whereas the birth of females has been discounted. While sons are emphasized in texts, the births of daughters are not even mentioned in the Hebrew Scriptures. In fact, it is lamented in some prayers, such as a traditional one recited by Jewish men. Blessed art thou, O Lord, our God, who hath not made me a woman. Other roles in the ideal Jewish wife has included obtaining provisions for the home, buying and selling their woven and sewed goods in the marketplace, and being strong and capable, while also being able to provide food for the family. According to the laws given by Yahweh to Moses at Sinai and the story of the Levite's concubine, women were considered men's property and not persons in their own right. In fact, before a woman is married, her father has rights over her. Once she is married, there is a transfer of the father's rights in the woman to the husband. These beliefs are mentioned in the Talmud, which is considered the most influential book regarding the status of women in Judaism. The Talmud claims that women are prone to sorcery and danger if they function outside of the accepted institutions as independent persons. It claims that they are meant only to rely on men. There are a few rules and obligations in place when it comes to women in Judaism. There's a whole book called the Niddah that emphasizes purity and contains rules regarding menstruation. Some of the regulations mentioned includes the avoidance of sexual contact and prohibiting women from entering the temple during their menstruation. Some of these rules are still observed today in Orthodox Judaism. In the Talmud, there are 613 obligations for men that include studying the Torah and attending temple. However, there are only 3 obligations listed for women, like lighting candles for celebrations and breaking the bread. Women aren't required to study the philosophies of the religion, as some believe this would interfere with their obligation to being the ideal wife and mother. When it comes to divorce, women barely have any rights. Divorce may only take place upon the husband's action. He could divorce because of adultery, childlessness, indiscretion, or immodesty. However, if a woman wanted a divorce, she must try to persuade her husband to divorce her. If she has good reasons to divorce her husband, but he refuses, then a rabbi or a Jewish court can be brought in to try and convince the husband to divorce the wife. However, the wife has no say. Sometimes, if the man doesn't provide the bill of divorce, or if he disappears, the woman becomes what is called an aguna. If the wife claims her husband was killed in the war or the Holocaust, she is not free to remarry unless she finds 2 male witnesses to appear in court on her behalf. Once the Jews were emancipated in Europe in the early 19th century, Jewish faith began to change. Reform Judaism took place, which championed women's rights. Women's equality became more and more prevalent until history was made in 1972. Sally Presand became the first publicly ordained woman rabbi, and now women can be ordained as rabbis and cantors in Reform, Conservative, and Reconstructionist Judaism. Though Orthodox Judaism does not follow this, it now encourages the study of the Torah and women participating in some Jewish rituals. Today, Jewish feminists have been challenging halakha, also known as Jewish law, and uncovering androcentric biases, while also reinterpreting texts and changing the way women are interpreted in them. Jewish feminists also argue that God is gender neutral, as they think that there is no basis in tradition to refer to God as he. They emphasize feminine images of the divine, as Jewish texts mention Shekinah and wisdom, which are feminine images of the Spirit of God at the Sabbath and the beginning of creation. Feminists believe certain practices do not derive from Judaism directly, but were in place because of cultural contexts at the time. For example, the separation of women and men in the temple started as a tradition, not based on the religion. Traditions have been revised, such as the rite of passage ceremony, now being available for young girls to celebrate, also known as bat mitzvahs. In addition, Jewish marriage ceremonies include statements by the bride as well. Now, there are new rituals for women during childbirth, such as naming baby girls, making menarche, and menopause. The language used in liturgies are gender inclusive as well. Judaism is still a transforming tradition while trying to maintain Jewish identity and community. While Judaism traditionally envisioned its people as Jews, or the men, and the others as in other than the norm, or women, there is a long road ahead for change. Judith Plaskow, a professor of religious studies with specialization in feminist theology, once said, "Once we begin to see women as a class and gender as a central category for the analysis of any culture or tradition, we are bound to break out of a system which renders women's status invisible." Women and their experiences must be seen as important and relevant in order to shake up the traditional Jewish beliefs and thoughts. Jewish feminists today strive for leadership rather than hierarchy, and unity rather than separation and distinctions. While there is still room for change, Judaism's view on women has changed drastically since its very beginnings. And so to conclude, I have a discussion question for all of you. Going back, we remember that sometimes traditions can be formed in religions because of the cultural context at the time. So how can you tell if a rule in a religion was formed because that is what the actual religion believes, or because that was the cultural norm at the time?